Good morning, subscribers, and this morning you join me once again with another video on the 593 pre-release for the GCSE paper June 2018. And if you've been following this series, you'll know that the last video that I did, we were looking at the whole notion of specialisation and trade. Now, I'm just sort of uploading these videos in the order in which I'm teaching the material. So actually what we have done and what I've done this week with my class is that we have been looking again at the whole notion of the current account. We've had a little bit of a look at the exchange rates as well, but mainly focusing here on the current account because we feel that it is likely there will be a question appearing with regard to the size of the current account deficit and how one might start to close the gap and reduce the size of that current account deficit. So the first thing I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to just show you my Twitter feed. So at G_Conomics. If you're not a follower, then do follow. And why would you want to do that? Well, because, particularly pertinent at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see lots and lots of relevant articles with regard to good application points for this particular pre-release. So here we've got a nice one from the Economist Espresso. If you haven't got the Economist Espresso app, I do recommend that you get it. And this is all about depreciation of sterling. It talks in here about the impact of that on UK exports. I'm sure you know that impact yourselves, but do have a look. And then obviously, at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, we have President Trump is in Davos at the moment, but one of the things that they're talking about there is obviously global trade. And here we have one or two articles again from the Espresso, again about Mr. Trump and his protectionist policies. Now, of course, that was a big part of his presidential election campaign, that he was going to de-globalise, and in fact he was going to raise the shutters against trade. That hasn't quite happened quite so substantially. However, they have been doing one or two things. I'm sure you've heard this week about the tariffs on solar panels and washing machines. Again, another great article there from the ft.com. And if you can use these and read these are all great application points and possibly evaluation points which you can include in any answers that you may get. That really will sort the A grades from the A star grades, ladies and gentlemen. So, let's get to this whole notion of protectionism. So I want to talk to you first of all about why it's essential to have protectionism. And I'm really just quoting these points from the OCR endorsed GCSE textbook. So what is protectionism? Well, as I mentioned there, this whole notion of deglobalization, so reining back from free trade and reducing world trade. And why would you want to do that? Well, there are a number of reasons. Number one, the infant industry argument. So in other words, small fledgling startup companies, they are not able to compete with the likes of Alibaba or Amazon or wherever it may be, and so they need some protection until they grow and mature and can stand on their own 2 feet. So that's one reason. You protect the infant industries, then once they're established, by all means, remove that protection. Secondly, to prevent the dumping, or an anti-dumping measure, of cheap goods in foreign countries. So for example, China had an excess supply of steel. And because there was an excess supply, the price of it was falling to the floor. And because they had no use for it, they then just exported it and dumped it in foreign economies. Now, that's no good for the foreign economy, because the foreign economy, who may be producing steel as well, cannot compete with the Chinese price, which is on the floor, relative to their higher domestic price. So you prevent that sort of activity via these anti-dumping policies. Thirdly, to protect jobs. Very important. And one of the things which made Mr. Trump is really, it's one of his key focal points, isn't it? Bringing the jobs back to America. So protect your local jobs from foreign competitors' goods, stop their washing machines coming in, and make sure that people are just buying your own. Prevent negative externalities. Now, of course, international trade, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, I think, puts this best. International trade results in the race to the bottom. And what did he mean by that? He meant that firms, particularly multinational companies, they seek out countries where the regulations, particularly with regard to emissions, are the absolute lowest, where wages are the lowest, where workers' rights are minimal if non-existent, and they exploit that. And with getting back to the pollution, to prevent negative externalities, you can put up protectionist policies so you don't get so many of these goods being produced, therefore the environmental damage is less. And then finally, for political policy reasons. So the greatest example, isn't it, in recent times is, of course, Mr. Trump's presidential election campaign, where people felt that particularly the relationship on their current account, actually, as they have it, an enormous current account deficit that the US is running, particularly with China, well, they feel that that is a consequence of jobs being lost overseas, because firms are locating overseas and producing overseas, and then the Americans are importing the goods which they once made. So how do you protect against that? Well, you say, right, well, we'll not have the goods from China and we will start to produce them again ourselves. So, great relevant example there. Okay, ladies and gents, so I'm just going to stop the video there, and I'll start up to the next video, which will be then talking about the implementation of the various protectionist policy measures, which you really will need to know very well, particularly, I feel, the diagrams. So I'll be back with that in the next video. Bye for now.